Hi there, Release Fight here. So I'm going to talk you through how I managed to beat the Whisper boss here in Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's the penultimate fight in the game, and as you can see from the length of the video, it's a bit of a long one, but if the tips help you out, drop me a like below. As ever, all of your support is massively appreciated. But as you can see, I'm just reapplying all of my materia before starting this fight. So before you get into it, just make sure everybody in your party has got a good setup of materia, because you will have done a fair amount of chopping and changing around up until this point, but this is a boss fight where you'll need everybody, so make sure everybody is well set up. And then when you get into the fight, it's just a case of getting in close and building up your ATBs. And then I used Braver on Whisper Rubrum, and that managed to pressurize it, and that gave me an opportunity to get in some good damage with the intention to bring this down as quickly as possible, because as soon as you take down one of the mini Whispers, you get a chance to take some hits at the big Whisper, who is the real boss in this fight. So like I say, as soon as it's pressured, unleash everything on it, because what you want to do is take it down as quickly as possible. Hopefully a few of your other party members have got some good abilities to use, and that should get you through this little section, and then you'll go through to the second phase. Now there's quite a few little phases to make it through, but essentially as soon as you get through to the second phase, all of the Whispers will be back with all of their health bars pretty full, and so you just need to choose one and go after it with everything that you've got. Fire damage does pretty good impact, so it's a good one to use. But like I said, just keep going after the one that you've already chipped away at. So keep on going after that one with everybody in your team. And you'll see in this little section, when you do keep going after the one, it will eventually just disappear. As you can see, Whisper Crossio did, and then you're free to go after the others, and that should again see you through to another phase, and you'll have to make your way up and around to get to the next platform where you'll continue the fight. Make sure you heal along the way, and then as soon as you get back in, hit up your big fire damage, and then keep on chipping away at the one that you've got. For me, it's Whisper Rubrum, and you can see by switching party members quite regularly, it didn't take too long to pressurize it, and then I can hit it with everything quite freely, and that was enough to take it down. And once you take it down, then you'll get a stagger. So they don't stagger until you hit them with enough damage, and then they insta-stagger, and then that will also stagger the main Whisper, which will give you a chance to get in some damage on Whisper Harbinger, which is the big fella up in the sky. So you can see I predominantly used abilities to chip away at Whisper Rubrum, and eventually managed to get it to stagger. So it takes a little bit of time, but if you keep on hitting those abilities, you can see focused abilities do quite good amount of damage, and then that managed to bring it down, and I could get in some damage on Whisper Harbinger. You should also be able to see that I tried to use Tifa to increase the amount of stagger damage I was doing, but it only increased the amount of stagger damage I did on Whisper Rubrum. It didn't do any increases for Whisper Harbinger, so don't spend any time doing that. Instead, just hit it with all your big moves, and that should chip it down nicely and take out one of the Whispers at this phase, and then it's just a case of cycle, rinse, repeat for the others. Your party will switch around quite a lot as you go, but if you keep focusing on taking out one of the Whispers, then you'll eventually get your chance to do some bigger damage on Whisper Harbinger. Now I tried lots of different magic on different Whispers, and it's kind of difficult to see who is weak to what, because if they're using something like a scatter, then you don't actually see the damage, but you can see Whisper Crossio is weak to fire damage at the moment, but it changes later on where he doesn't appear to have the same kind of weakness, so it kind of changes as you go. So the point is, when you see they are weak to anything, then hit them with everything you've got. However, that will change throughout the fight, so the best thing is just to keep on going after the one that you're chipping away at, and then once you've got the stagger, then you can do some huge damage on Whisper Harbinger. So you can see I just continued going after Whisper Crossio, and eventually he staggered, and then that gave me an opportunity to get some hits on Whisper Harbinger and get it a little bit closer to that all-important endpoint. But you can see in this section that I tried to target some of my efforts directly at Whisper Harbinger instead of firing them at the Whisper that was down, and that doesn't actually do as much damage to Whisper Harbinger as dealing damage does to the downed Whisper, so you can see that didn't do a huge amount of damage, but then as soon as I go back to targeting Whisper Crossio, then my damage on Whisper Harbinger goes up. So focus your hits on the downed Whisper during the stagger, and that will give you more damage on Whisper Harbinger for each of the phases that you go through. And you should be able to see that in this little section here where I've just about managed to finish off Whisper Veridi, and it doesn't take long to stagger it, and I'm getting all of my hits directly on Whisper Veridi. And you can see by doing that, I managed to get Whisper Harbinger under 50% of its health bar by completely laying into Whisper Veridi while he's down. And if you keep doing that for each of the phases, you'll definitely do more damage to Whisper Harbinger, especially with abilities and Cloud's Punisher mode. And that should see you through to what is going to be the most difficult phase, where you get all three of them back and then they join forces after you do a little bit of impact into Whisper Bahamut. And this git might not be difficult to actually hit, but it does this huge monster move, and even if you take out Ifrit to be able to get some damage on it, it will still unleash this epic move that just brings everybody down close to being finished. You can see it has a huge damage on everybody, and then you've just got to bring in the cures and get everybody back in action as much as you can before you even start to face off against Whisper Bahamut. One option is that you can use your best barrier magic on the character that's got the lowest health as soon as you see Whisper Bahamut coming together with all three of them, and that might give you enough to be able to keep more of your party in the mix. And then, like I said, it doesn't take much to get some damage in on Whisper Bahamut, and as soon as you bring it down to the ground, you can then start to chip away at its health bar, and you can see it doesn't take long to get it lower than 50%. So essentially, I used Ifrit's Crimson Dive, which brought it down to the ground, but you can also use the Radiant Plume, which will do the same trick. So hit it with that, bring it down to the ground, and you should be able to finish off Whisper Bahamut really quickly. You can see that brings it down to the ground, and then all your characters can get in to be able to take it out of the equation, and then it splits back up and you got these three gits to fight once again. Luckily, Ifrit landed with his huge move, which did a big boss amount of damage and staggered quite a few of the Whispers, and then it's just a case of laying in the damage. And at this point, this is where you're going to do the biggest impact on Whisper Harbinger's health bar, so you want to focus all your efforts on the downed Whispers to be able to get in a huge amount of damage on Whisper Harbinger and keep chipping away. One thing you will notice there is that at this stage you can increase the staggered percentage on Whisper Harbinger by using Tifa's Whirlwind move on the Whispers that are downed in front of you, and that's a good way to get in your damage. And then you'll essentially have to repeat a series of phases that allows Barrett to get in a big shot on Whisper Harbinger. So just keep on smashing up the downed Whispers, and you should be able to cycle, rinse, repeat this really quickly. Get yourself through this little section and just keep giving Barrett an opportunity to fire one off at Whisper Harbinger up in the sky. By this stage, you might be a little low on MP, or at least some of your party might be low on MP and not able to use magic, but that's not too big a deal because you can still use abilities pretty easily, and then there's bound to be at least one, in my case Aerith, who's got just a really healthy amount of MP, who you can use to drop some serious magic on one of the downed Whispers, and that should again see you through to another chance to take a pop at Harbinger, and then you should just have one left to deal with. And Cloud's Punisher mode is definitely a good way to get through to a stagger really fast, and then it's just a case of landing your last chunks of damage to be able to take you through to the final phase of the fight with Whisper Harbinger, who will be the only one left. And at this stage, you might want to take some time to cure up anybody in your party that doesn't look particularly healthy, but then you get your final shot with Barrett, and then it's just you against Whisper Harbinger with very little health left on its health bar. One thing that's worth mentioning is the sheer amount of damage Cloud's Infinity Ward ability just did. Its final strike did 23,000 damage on the health bar, so that is definitely worth unleashing. as you go through this fight, and then it's just a case of taking your pot shots at Whisper Harbinger with anything and everything. But by this stage, it shouldn't have too much left on the clock, and it's just a case of getting in close, getting in a few hits, and that will be the end of this bad boy. And that is how to beat Whisper Harbinger and the rest of the Whispers here in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Hopefully the tips for the boss fight help you out. If they do, drop me a like below. You can also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already with the links on the left hand side, and check out the rest of my guide to Final Fantasy VII Remake with the links on the right hand side. Leave any comments, let me know how you get on against the Whisper boss fight, and I will catch you next time.